Alrighty, my AP kids in fourth period, this is where we left off today. So let's finish off. We had a great class, and so let's finish off our notes and get excited for tomorrow and what we're going to do. So the characteristics of those likely to vote. I apologize, we left off right here. Reasons for low voter turnout, the institutional barriers, the motor voter bill, and what all that did. And then we went down to ballot fatigue. And so on number 3, excessive number of elections, we just learned about the different types of elections. Again, there's too many elections out there for people, so people, they don't want to vote. So that's the third reason why there's reasons for low voter turnout. In other countries, the government will issue when we're going to vote or when they're going to have a vote. In our country, it's just scheduled, again, every 2 years, every year. It's just too much for a lot of people. Another thing is type of election, like we talked about earlier. General election turnout and primary election turnout, again, are not going to be typically great in numbers, because the best one is the chief executive election turnout and the legislative executive turnout. And like I said, presidential elections have the highest voter turnout. So depends on the election, depends upon people are going to go out there and vote. Another one is difficulties in obtaining an absentee ballot. An absentee ballot is something you get if you're not going to be at home when the election is and you want to mail your vote in. And you usually can mail it in even before the day to vote. And, the second week in November before you guys vote. Number 6 is young people, as we talked about again, can have the lowest voter turnout. When the 26th Amendment was ratified, turnout, quote-unquote, naturally declined because now you have a bigger pool of people, and especially being so young. They have low political efficacy and low internal political efficacy, which basically means they don't believe in the system, one, and they don't believe that their vote counts, and they don't believe what they're doing has any great ramifications on the vote, on the political process. A political reason, as what was brought up in class today, is there is a lack of political efficacy, that people just don't think that, again, politics matters, that the vote is going to matter, that anything they do is going to change the system. And so because of that, people have a tendency not to vote. Second reason is dissatisfaction with candidates, parties, and politics in general. You guys know this person. This person complains about the system, complains about everybody. Oh, I hate both candidates. I'm not going to. Again, if you hate both candidates, vote for the alternative. If there's not an alternative, I guess the answer would be vote for the one you dislike the most. The third one, lack of strong two-party competition. You're dissatisfied with Republicans and Democrats. You want something different. Think about the emergence of the Tea Party and what happened there, and the emergence of the Green Party when they were unhappy with the Democrats in the late 90s and early 2000s. And so, if you don't have a third political party, lack of competition, people don't want to vote for either one. So that affects whether or not people are going to go out there and vote. Weakness of parties in mobilizing voters. They don't go out there and register voters. They don't go out there and remind people to vote. People do not want to volunteer their time. They are too busy in American society with voting, again, because there's too many elections. We just have a tendency to not to want to get involved. And so, again, these are reasons why there's low voter turnout. Who cares, who cares, who doesn't, and who votes? Characteristics of those likely to vote. I would just bullet these and add a little bit of information here, but level of education achievement is the greatest predictor of voting. Again, that's bold. That's on the AP exam. You want to highlight that, underline that. Again, like I said, those with high levels of education achievement, regardless to race, sex, or income status, are more likely to vote than those with low levels. Here's what I want you to do. Here's the question I told you there's going to be some discussion questions. This is one of the discussion questions that we'll have at the end. And the question I have for you here is, why? Why, with people with higher education levels, why are they more likely to vote? Again, why are people with higher education levels more likely to vote? So you're going to answer that question at the end. Think about it. Can you back it up with any statistics? Any statistics from a credible source? You got to complete the circle when you're doing this. So try to answer that question. Second one, income. Those with higher levels are more likely to vote. Again, think about, you can almost put a why at each one of these. Why do you suppose that is? Why are people with higher income more likely to vote? Is it because people with lower income don't believe in the political system, don't want to vote? Why? You tell me. Age. Older voters, again, are more likely to vote. Race. This is an interesting one here because the 2008 election changed this. In 2008, there were some other statistics there that changed this. It changed what people believed and what people thought here. But whites are more likely to vote than blacks, who are more likely to vote than Hispanic Americans are. However, when differences in socioeconomic status are factored out, African American votes at levels comparable to whites, and some studies show they can vote in higher percentages. I think we talked about this. We've talked about it in class a little bit. When you start really getting into socioeconomics and the differences there, the status between people, that really affects a lot of what they believe, or who they are. And again, the difference between people voting in Granite Bay and the difference between people voting in different parts of Sacramento, a lot of it's going to be based upon socioeconomic factors. And so that's that's a big issue there. And then, of course, with sex, we're talking about gender. Women voted at lower rates in the past, but that's no longer the case because now women, again, obviously, are starting to feel more empowered. With Clinton appealing to the soccer moms in the early 90s, or early mid-90s, that made women want to get more and more politically active. And now with the rise of people like Hillary Clinton, Sarah Palin, Michelle Bachmann, people see women in the news, in politics, making a difference. Nancy Pelosi is another one you could put in there. Barbara Boxer, Dianne Feinstein, our two senators, by the way, you should know that, from California. Again, these powerful women we see that are doing these things in politics, making a difference, and so other women want to get involved. The question here, does low voter turnout matter? Again, of course it does. And because, again, who's voting and things of this nature, I'll let you look at this. And you got here the second one. The problem, however, is that older whites with higher levels of income and educational achievement are overrepresented, which means too many of them are voting. This when you have a class bias. That's what class bias means. They're overrepresented in politics. And so they're the ones who dictate everything. If you don't like it, guess what? Vote. Vote, vote, vote. Don't let the older white, I want to say males, but the older whites, like it says in the notes, with higher levels of income, dictate to us what, again, are the laws. Again, if you don't like it, you got to change it. So a rebuttal to all this, some studies show that although non-voters are demographically different, they are not that politically different from voters and would not vote in a significantly different way than those that do vote. So really, what that is saying is it doesn't really make a difference politically. Other forms of political participation, you got petitions, you got demonstration marches, rallies, local party political meetings, making campaign contributions, writing letters to the editor or the internet equivalent thereof, and trying to persuade others. See, again, this is just finishing off our notes. I'm going to stop here for a second because I want to bring up an article that goes right back to this point with race and how in 2008 this completely changed. So I'm going to stop here. Our next one will be titled the Political Voter Behavior 2 for you guys, and that'll be looking at the statistics, and then we'll go to Voter Behavior 3.